Elias Wright's clammy fingers pressed against the 10th floor window. Not glass, not cold, warm, like pressing a palm to a fresh wound, the surface yielded under his knuckles, a soft, wet resistance. Fisquelchade. A sound like stepping on crushed grapes left behind by a slow, sticky rain. His thumb sank deeper, the membrane stretching thin, fin glistening. The metallic taste flooded his mouth. Not blood, but the sour, rancid tang of rusted iron. The elevator gears should ground beneath his feet, a slow, wet, thorny grind, like a throat full of broken glass being chewed. He yanked, his thumb free, a sharp thurip, like Velcro tearing from flesh. His fingers stung. Wet prints bloomed on the glass, not smudges, but time-blistered marks where the warmth had seared the surface. He blinked, focusing on the reflection. Fu Too Many Teeth smiled back. Not his, not the windows, the cat Sith. He'd seen it earlier, slinking through the empty halls of the hotel room. No windows, no doors, no vents. Just 4 walls of pale, peeling wallpaper smelling of damp earth and old books. The cat had been waiting by the doorframe, its fur a mottled grey, but its mouth stretched in a grin too wide, too full of teeth. Too many teeth, each one sharp, yellowed, and wet. Elias had recoiled, but the cat hadn't moved. It had just furfined watched, the grin fixed, as if the window itself was its face. Now the window Furwasi, the cat. The wetness wasn't a surface, it was the cat's breath, its skin. The furfitchus was the sound of its teeth closing in. Elias backed away, his heels scraping the floor. The 4th floor felt soft beneath his soles. Not wood or tile, but something quite organic, like stepping on a patch of warm, living moss. The color palette of the room pulsed with a faint, bruised plum light, casting long, shifting shadows that didn't quite match the walls. The gears to grind again, louder now, a rhythmic twet tearing from the direction of the door. He turned. The cat stood where the door should be, but the door was gone. Only the cat, its grin wider now, teeth clicking softly. Click, click, click. Clicker sound like tiny dry bones rattling in a tin can. The cat's eyes were dark, deep set, holding no recognition, only a quiet, patient hunger. Elias's breath hitched. He too many teeth. He'd counted them before. 15, not the usual 8 or 9. 15, the cat's smile was the map, the file, the 14. The window sucked it again. A deep, wet thump, as if the membrane had drawn in a breath. Elias's fingers trembled. The taste of rust was thick on his tongue, coating his teeth. He knew the cat was the window it had always been. The reflection had been a lie. The window hadn't been a window, it had been the cat's mouth. And now it was sooty hungry for his hand, for his hun soul he carried in the jar of a heart he'd found in the lab. He tried to pull away, but his feet sank into the floor, the pooly soft twee flesh beneath his soles. The gears so grind wet, so slow, gutting, and the cat's smile rippled, its teeth shifting, rearranging like beads in a necklace. Too many teeth thee. Too many teeth thee. Too many teeth thee. The wet prints on the glass, siddered, turning black, then peeling away like burnt skin. The cat's grin flickered, and for a second Elias saw the sootier window behind it, a vast empty void, cold and dark, with no glass, no warmth, just the sound of 1,000 twin-clicking teeth waiting. He couldn't breathe. The window sucked. Again, a deep, wet twinpool. His hand twintiff. The cat's smile. The window, it twinawasu. The exit, it twinawas. The file. And it was sooty hungry. The wet prints on the glass, soot blistered, blackening into the shape of a smile. The floor breathed. Not a tremor, not a settling of old wood, but a genuine rhythmic expansion and contraction. For soft tea, organic. Like sinking into a lung, the plushness giving way under my weight with a sigh. I knelt, my knees sinking further than they should, the material yielding with a wet thufekulch. The violet light, the bruised plum of the room's pervasive glow, intensified beneath me, pulsing with the rhythm of the floor's breath. It wasn't illumination so much as emanation. The floor was the light, the source of the strange, sickly luminescence. The cat padded over my thumb, the one that had torn, leaving a smear of something dark on the strange, yielding surface. It didn't walk, not exactly. It flowed, its mottled grey fur seeming to ripple and shift even as it moved. As if the color itself wasn't fixed, but a shifting current beneath its skin. It settled beside my hand, regarding me with an unnerving stillness, and then it smiled. Too many teeth. Not a playful baring of fangs, but a full, grotesque expansion of its jaw, revealing rows and rows of pointed yellow teeth. The count swam in my head, a cold, odd number against the rising panic, 15 at least. The grin stretched, widening until it seemed to consume the cat's face, becoming a map, a network of tiny, glistening fissures in its fur. I tried to pull my hand away, but my weight was sinking me deeper, the floor clinging to me like a lover's embrace, a suffocating, unwelcome intimacy. The taste of rust, that metallic tang, flooded my mouth again, coating my tongue, clinging to the back of my throat. It wasn't the taste of blood, not exactly, but something older, something corroded and forgotten. My gaze followed the cat's gaze, drawn to a sunken lump in the floor a few feet away. It wasn't a depression, not a flaw in the material, but a bulge, a subtle swelling beneath the surface. It pulsed in time with the floor's breath, a slow, deliberate beat. Like a heart. Not my heart, not the frantic hammering in my chest, but something else, something alien and deeply wrong. The cat licked my bleeding thumb, its tongue raspy, its touch sending a shiver down my spine. The wind, or whatever passed for wind in this place, tasted of dust and old paper, the scent of a forgotten library, of brittle pages and decaying leather. It filled my lungs, heavy and suffocating. I tried to stand, to pull away, but the floor held me fast. The violet light intensified, the room seeming to shrink, the walls pressing in on me. The gears grinded louder now, a wet, labored sound, like the straining of ancient machinery. It wasn't just a sound, it was a vibration, a tremor that ran through the floor and up my spine, rattling my teeth. The cat's smile broadened, the fissures deepening, the map becoming more intricate, more defined. It was a labyrinth, a maze of tiny, glistening pathways. I stared at the pulsing lump, the floor beneath it rising and falling, mimicking the rhythm of a heartbeat. It felt familiar. A memory, fragmented and distorted, flickered at the edge of my consciousness. A lab, a dissection table. A single beating heart suspended in a jar. The cat licked my blood again, its eyes fixed on mine, devoid of recognition, filled only with a quiet, patient hunger. The floor breathed again. A deep, wet vertifool, and the sunken lump rose higher, its surface smoothing out, becoming less like a bulge and more like a pathway, a tunnel, an opening. The cat's smile, whoosh, the map, I realized with a sickening lurch. The network of fissures, the tiny pathways, they weren't just on its face. They were on the floor, leading to that pulsing heart, to the opening, to something else. My soul, the cat was not leading me, but in carrying me. The map we'd wasso, and the floor knew it had always known. A tremor ran through the room, the violet light flaring, and the floor tave-penned, a gaping maw of flesh and light, waiting to swallow me whole. I stomped. The jar. Crack. A high, brittle sound, swallowed instantly by the rhythmic pulse of the floor. Heart, the crack. It pulsed, a sickening wet expansion against the violet gloom. Too many veins, a road map of crimson tributaries branching across its surface, with twifithef, fufev, fufev, fufiv, fufutiv, fushodit, vushu my bones, a discordant counterpoint to the floor's slow, deliberate breath. The gears say grind louder now, a wet, labored rasp, like the straining of ancient machinery. It wasn't just sound, it was a physical pressure, a tightening in my chest. Multiplicative. I kicked the jar again, a desperate, futile gesture. Fragments of glass scattered across the yielding floor, each shard reflecting the violet light in a fractured, distorted dance. The heart leapt. It wasn't a natural ejection, but a sudden, violent expulsion, propelled by some unseen force. It landed on the cat. The impact barely registered, the flesh of the floor absorbing the shock. The cat didn't flinch, it simply accepted it, and then it smiled again. The fissures on its face deepened, the map becoming more intricate, more unsettling. Its teeth, those countless, yellowed points, seemed to shift, to rearrange themselves. And then, with a sickening wet thwee-squelch, they began to multiply. They weren't teeth anymore. They were eyes, too many, each a tiny black void, reflecting nothing, seeing everything. A chorus of silent observation. I stared, paralyzed. The taste of rust coating my tongue, clinging to the back of my throat. The floor breathed, the rhythm accelerating, the violet light intensifying. The heart nestled amongst the cat's mottled fur, beat not with a biological pulse, but with a mechanical insistence. It beat footy me name, a slow, deliberate cadence echoing within the confines of my skull. Elias, Elias, Elias. The sound wasn't audible, not precisely. It was a vibration, A tremor in my very being, a psychic intrusion that bypassed my ears and resonated directly within my consciousness. The cat's smile widened, the eyes multiplying, the labyrinth of fissures deepening. It wasn't a grin anymore. It was a doorway, a portal. The floor beneath it, shubby opened. Not a clean break, not a smooth separation, but a tearing, a rending of the flesh-like material, revealing a pulsing, violet maw, a tunnel of light and shadow leading somewhere. The floor smelled of wet clay and something else. Something ancient and indefinable, a scent that triggered a primal unease deep within my core. A memory surfaced, fleeting and distorted, a sterile room, the hum of machinery, the cold metallic tang of antiseptic. A dissection table, a single beating heart suspended in a jar. The memory dissolved as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only a residue of dread. My body felt heavy, leaden, as if the floor were actively drawing me in. My limbs were unresponsive, my will diminished. The cat nudged my hand with its head, its fur rough against my skin, and I felt a strange compulsion, an irresistible urge to move forward, to step into that pulsing violet maw. The floor breathed, a deep, wet pull. The air grew thick, viscous, as if I were trying to swim through treacle. The taste of dust and old paper filled my lungs, heavy and suffocating. The gears twin-greened again, a wet, mechanical protest against the unfolding horror. I tried to resist, to fight against the pull, but it was futile. My feet moved of their own accord, drawn inexorably towards the opening. I wanted to scream, to shout, to cry out for help, but my voice was trapped, a silent prisoner within my throat. The metallic rasp of fur against my skin was the only sound I could perceive. The cat's presence a constant, unsettling reassurance. The map, the cat's smile, Fridwasu, the map, the fissures, the pathways, they weren't just on its face. They were on the floor, leading to that pulsing heart, to the opening, to somewhere beyond I didn't want to know. I couldn't know. But the floor knew. It had always known. The violet light flared, blindingly bright, and the floor thickened further, the maw widening, revealing a glimpse of what lay beyond. A swirling vortex of violet and shadow, a place beyond comprehension, beyond sanity, a place that called to me with a silent, irresistible promise. The Velcro tearing sound echoed in my head, a sharp, visceral fish rip. It wasn't a sound I heard, but felt, a sensation of being torn, of being unraveled. My name echoed again, a mechanical whisper in the depths of my mind. Elias. The floor pulsed, and the maw waited. The door wasn't wood, it was Sivkin, thick, glistening, the color of old bruises beneath the violet glow. My fingers sank into it like pressing into damp dough, the resistance warm, almost breathing. The air smelled of mildewed paper and something sharper, like the inside of a wound. My breath fogged in front of me, but not from cold, from the door, as own exhalation, a slow, wet sigh that slithered into my lungs. I pushed. The sound was wrong. Not a creak, not a groan. Velcro, 1,000 strips of it tearing at once, the fibers sticking, resisting, then giving way with a sound like a man, spine unraveling. The door did T-swing. A flap of flesh, slick and glistening, hung limply in my grip, the edges raw and pink. Beneath it, the darkness yawned. Not a threshold, but a fawn mouth, teeth of rusted gears grinding shut behind me as I forced it open. Inside, the stench hit first. Not decay, but T-filing. The scent of cardstock and ink, of typewriter keys left pressed too long, of 1,000 red stamps waiting to be pressed. The walls weren't T-walls. They were fudroras, rows upon rows of them, each one the size of a man, each one breathing. A slow, rhythmic expansion and contraction, the wood groaning like a living thing, the grain splitting open just enough to reveal the contents within. Fingers, too many fingers, not hands, just fingers curled and twitching, pressing against the glass of the drawers like something trying to get out. The nails were black, chipped, the tips stained with something darker than blood. Fording tinged, the same color as the tag they held between their digits, a rectangle of cardstock, already half, filled with my name, my Ford case number, the rest waiting to be written. Helios Wright, case number 34B. Asterisk, the fingers that moved died, not in unison, each at its own pace, a grotesque ballet of bureaucratic efficiency. One tapped the edge of its drawer, another adjusted the tag, the tip of the nail dragging across the paper like a typewriter key. The sound was wet, a squelch with every movement, as if the flesh were too soft to serve, too yielding coo. I didn't think, I reached in. My hand disappeared up to the wrist before I realized what I was doing. The fingers weren't just touching me. They were twin measuring. A cool, clammy pressure wrapped around my forearm, not gripping, not pulling, just assessing. The drawer shuddered, the wood groaning as it adjusted its dimensions to fit me. The tag in the fingers. A red line appeared. A fresh stamp, pressing into my skin through the fabric of my sleeve, though burn. Not pain. Fire recording. The ink wasn't teat just on the paper. It was swind burning into me, a slow, deliberate branding. The fingers didn't flinch, they didn't react. They were filing Quinn. And I was the document. The cat was behind me before I heard it, a brush of fur against my neck, then the wet squelch of its tongue dragging along my ear. Not a lick, tasting. Not my skin, but the cave, the tag, the case. Its breath was warm, reeking of old parchment, and something metallic, like a coin left in a pocket for decades. It didn't purr, it hummed, a low, vibrating purr that resonated in my teeth, my bones, the hollow of my chest where my heart should have been. I yanked my arm free. The drawer slammed shut. Not with force, with terrific reluctance, the fingers curled inward, the nails scraping against the glass like a fingernail against a chalkboard. The tag stayed. The ink stayed. The red line on my sleeve was already darkening, spreading like a bruise. The numbers and letters were moving, rearranging themselves into something else. Asterisk into a door. Asterisk into a door. Asterisk the cat. Breath was in my ear again, a whisper, but not in words. A weight against my skull, a hand pressing down, holding me in place. The drawers shifted, not opening, not closing, figuring. The walls weren't T-walls anymore. They were swin hallways, endless branching, each one lined with more fingers, more tags, files, more case files. The door was gone. In its place, a fine mouth. Not the one eye, forced open, but another, wider, deeper. The gears inside crowned, a wet, labored rasp. The sound of something massive turning, adjusting, foam preparing. The violet light pulsed. Not flickering, not dimming, but breathing, expanding, contracting, pulling me in. The cat's tongue was back, not on my ear this time, on my foot palm. A slow, deliberate lick, the texture of its tongue like sandpaper against a fresh cut. I tasted tun paper, 14 file cabinets, asterisk the wind howled. Not outside. Inside, asterisk a gust of it, dry and papery, carrying the scent of old books and something burnt. The pages of 1,000 case files, each one my name, each one in funbin. The fingers in the drawers moved in unison this time. Not toward me. Away, asterisk the wallstub. Not shut, not locked, filed asterisk the door anymore. It was a 40 stamp. And it was pressing down. The glass was not glass. It was sickin', stretched thin over the frame of the door, the same violet bruise that had split when I pushed through the first. My fingers, stupid, obedient fingers, closed around the edge and fripped. Not a clean break, not a shatter. The sound was wet, 1,000 wet tears, the fibers of the membrane peeling back in strips, each one leaving a raw pink gash behind, oozing something thick and slow as tar. The air inside screamed, not with sound, with Twify pressure. A gust of it, dry as parchment, carrying the scent of old ledgers and the metallic tang of rusted hinges. I stumbled, not forward, not back, fusidwased. The floor was wrong, not wood, not tile, not floor at all. It was fine flesh to the same color as the door, but softer, yielding. My boot sank into it, the sole pressing against something warm, something that twindy moved beneath the pressure. A wet twillich, like walking on a corpse's belly, the texture of it slick, almost twindy slippery, as if the whole structure were alive and twin-breathing beneath me. I yanked my foot free. The flesh gaped, a mouth of dark, glistening tissue, the edges twitching like a wound stitched shut by a clumsy hand. 13 floors. The thought wasn't mine. It was the building. It was the building. It was the way the gears in the walls ground faster, a wet, grinding squelcher that vibrated in my teeth, my bones, the hollow of my chest where my heart should have been. I looked up. No ceiling, no sky, just tiffy windows. Rows of them, each one a perfect square of violet bruise, each one footing showing me, not my face, not just my face. Only of me, running, falling, breathing. The reflection wasn't static. It was Sudin moving, a grotesque puppet show of my own body. Each window a different angle, a different foodie version of me, all of them food-twitching watching. The gears screamed louder, a wet, metallic foodie wail that drowned out my own breath, my own heartbeat. The building wasn't a building. It was a footy machine, and I was the fuel. The cat was already there, not on the floor, not on the wall, footed between the floors. A streak of violet, a blur of teeth, its body thorn stretching, body warping, the space around it twin-ripping like fabric, the air foot hissing as it filled the gap. It didn't walk. It slid, its paws leaving wet, glistening trails in the flesh of the floor, the same color as the blood on its grin. Too many teeth, not fangs, not canines, or leafeat of them. Row upon row, each one pointed, each one shining, the light from the windows reflecting off them like broken glass. Its tongue was out, not licking, tasting the air, the combi, ink, the tombe case. I ran, not toward the door, not toward the windows, toward the Fumbikat, toward the Sungap. The floor foregroaned beneath me, the flesh shuddering as I pressed my weight against it, the edges of the wound footing, sealing, the gears in the walls grinding faster, the squelch of them drowning out my own breath. The windows showed me running. Not one version, not two, all of them, every window, every floor, every flaction of me, all of them watching, all of them sorting, waiting. The cat's grin was wider now, not a smile, a footy adore. The teeth twist-shifted, the rows of them porting, the space between them, darku, deep, the same color as the bruise on the door. I didn't hesitate, I jumped, the flesh ripped, not cleanly, not neatly. The sound was wet, a wet tear, the edges of the wound tweeling back, the gears in the walls screaming, the swelter of them drowning out my own breath. I fell, not down, not up through. The cat was waiting, not on the other side, inside. Its body was pseudo open, the flesh of its belly split. Like the floor, the rows of teeth parting, the space between them dark, the same color as the bruise on the door. I didn't think. I fell, the gears in the walls stopped, not with a click, not with a forklang, with a forquelched, a wet final twice squelch. The sound of something twin-breaking, something quin-giving. The light from the windows flickered, not dimming, not dying, twin-breathing. The cat's grin closed, not shut, not shield. Filed. The floor beneath me was flesh again, not skin, not muscle, for flesh. The same color as the door, the same color as the cat's grin, the same color as the footy bruise on my sleeve. I was stiff inside, not the building, not the floor. Fujit showed. Me, not my face, not my body. Every version, every twin cases. For city filed. The gears in the walls started again, not grinding, not screaming, filing, the cat's tongue was on my palm, not licking, tasting, the tween they say, the file. Its breath was warm, not hot, not cold, forfui, made, the same color as the bruise on the door, the same color as the forflesh beneath me. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. The gears in the walls, faster, the squelch of them drowned out my own heartbeat. The cat's grin opened, not wider, not narrower, or deeper, and I fell. The metal tasted of nothing at first, just cold. The curve of it pressed against the back of my teeth, a foreign weight. Then the grit, fine, almost powdery, like the inside of a forgotten toolbox rust. I thought, old blood, something older. The cat shoved it further, deeper. Not gently. A pressure against my molars, a grinding insistence. My jaw ached. The key wasn't shaped for a lock. It was shaped for 20 mai. It wasn't smooth. The surface wasn't uniform. It was scored, ridged, like the bone of a creature's spine. Each groove a tiny, insistent pressure against my tongue, the metal warming with the heat of my mouth, the warmth spreading sickeningly. A film coated my teeth, slick and viscous, tasting faintly of iron and something else, something familiar, like the scent of the ink in the case files, but sharper, more concentrated. The floor breathed, a slow, deliberate rise and fall. The flesh beneath my boots unyielding. With each pulse, The gears in the walls silent now, their metallic screech replaced by this organic rhythm. It wasn't a comfortable sensation, it wasn't even a natural one. It felt like standing on the chest of something enormous, something twin-sleeping, and I was disturbing it. I tried to swallow, the key wouldn't allow it. It was wedged too firmly, the metal biting into the soft tissue of my gums, the taste of my own blood mingling with the rust and the iron. The cat's breath, warm against my eyelid, smelled of nothing at all. Just the absence of air. It wasn't watching my eyes. It was watching footy through them. My own teeth. That's what it was. The taste wasn't iron. It wasn't blood. It was twin bone. My own bones somehow transferred to the metal, to the cat's tongue. To Tum-Tai Mai, the realization didn't come as a thought. It came as a sensation, a cold, creeping awareness that the key wasn't being forced into my mouth. It was being so remembered, but I didn't chew. I didn't struggle. The cat wouldn't allow it. Oh, perhaps I couldn't. My muscles felt sluggish, unresponsive, as if my body wasn't my own. The metal grated against my enamel, a wet, grinding sound that echoed in the hollow of my skull, the vibration traveling down my spine, settling in my teeth. The cat licked my eyelid. A rough, rasping touch. The windows honchoed me. Not my face, not my body. The case files, each one open, each one illuminated by the violet light, the pages filled with cramped handwriting, with diagrams, with photographs of me, of my face, of my body, of my teeth. The same rows of sharp, pointed teeth, the same sickening grin, the gears hen file D, not grinding, not screaming filing. The sound was subtle, almost imperceptible, a high-pitched whine that resonated in my bones, the air around me vibrating with an unseen energy. The floor shifted, not beneath me, I round in me. The flesh reformed, the wounds closing, the surface smoothing, the color deepening, the violet bruise spreading, thushuming, consuming. The cat's grin widened, the rows of teeth stretching, distorting, the space between them growing, the darkness within deepening, the same color as the bruise on the door, the same color as the flesh beneath my feet. It wasn't a smile, it was a foot away, a doorway. And the key was the Fulachi. I tasted bone. The texture was wrong. Not smooth, not polished, thuffy-truffed. Jagged, the metal grated against my gums, the edges of the key splitting, the metal peeling away, the surface dissolving, the taste spreading, filling my mouth, coating my tongue, becoming I my tongue. The cat's grin was a hollow, a dark, endless hollow. It was my soul. The key wasn't unlocking something. It was Twenty extracting. The cat's tongue tasted my blood. The desk was a wound in the room, a jagged gash of mahogany that oozed with something darker than varnish. My fingers hovered above it, the air between us thick with the scent of old parchment and something metallic like a coin left too long in a pocket. The cat sat upon it, tail curled around its paws, but its grin never faltered, not a smile, but a stitche, a line of teeth too numerous to count, each one pressing against the next like the teeth of a gear I knew better than to reach. The last man who had tried had come back with fingers like roots, split and knotted at the knuckles. I wrote the complaint on a slip of paper I didn't remember pulling from my pocket. The ink was a thick, black sludge, the nib of the pen dragging like a rusted nail through wet flesh. Filing a complaint. The words tasted of iron. The desk breathed as I wrote, the wood expanding slightly, the grain shifting beneath my fingers, a wrongness, not decay, not rot, something crowing. The cat's tongue flicked out. A pink, too wide thing tasting the air between us. The pen slipped. The paper didn't. It stuck to my palm, the ink seeping into my skin like a brand. The letters formed, the edges curling, the edges of the words peeling away from the paper, slithering like maggots across my flesh. Fiflias right. My name, written in something darker than ink, something the Timotine. The desk groaned. Not wood, not metal, fleflish. The surface. Shorshafusha. A slow, wet heave, the varnish splitting like skin, revealing something glistening beneath. Something shoftav, something totally alive. Fingers. Too many fingers. They pressed from the desk's surface, not emerging, not pushing through, but toven folding, like the petals of a flower made of sinew and scar tissue, wet, glistening. The first one brushed my wrist, a touch like the back of a cold fish. I jerked away, but the fingers followed. A dozen of them, each one longer than the last, the nails black and chipped like broken teeth. They wrapped around my forearm, not grasping, not pulling, but tifilim. The sound was wrong. No scrape, no grind. but a wet, rhythmic further chink, like a knife being dragged across bone, only deeper, more insistent. I punched the desk. The impact sent a shockwave through my arm, but the fingers didn't break, didn't bleed. They absorbed. The blow, the skin of my knuckles splitting against them, the blood welling not from my hand, but from the desk itself, a dark, viscous ooze that dripped from the tips of the fingers, splattering onto the wood like a sickly rain. The cat's grin widened, not in amusement. In recognition. The fingers she rearranged themselves, not pulling me, but tour-guiding, pressing against my palm, forcing my hand toward the surface. The paper burned, not with flame, with torture. The ink melted into my skin, the letters digging in the edges of the complaint peeling away from the paper and into my flesh. Forlia's right. The words weren't on my skin. They were shorn. Would you it? The desk pulled it at my hand. The fingers not letting go, not hurting, but typhing cysting. I stared at my own wrist. Too many fingers, too many Funkli Leansweilens. The veins had split, not bleeding, but tiving, the flesh, parting to reveal something darker beneath, something twine-writing itself into my arm. The same cramped, frantic handwriting from the case files, the same diagrams, the same teeth. The cat's breath was a wet sword against my ear. Its teeth didn't touch me. They didn't need to. The file cabinet twin-signed itself into my skin, not with a pen but with twin-teeth tea. The same rows of sharp, jagged things, the same sickening grin. The desk when shifted, the fingers went retreating, but not in fear. In anticipation, the cat's tongue pressed against my jaw, not licking, not tasting, but toitry redding. The file wasn't just on my skin, it was in my sweet mouth. The taste of iron, of bone, of something twin familiar and wrong. I stared at my hand, too many fingers, too many foilin swilin. The file cabinet wasn't a desk. It was a fire door, and the complaint wasn't a complaint, it was an invitation. The cat's grin was a fouilletch, and the key was already inside me. The jar was always cold, but not like ice, like the inside of a mouth that had forgotten how to swallow. My fingers hovered over the lid, the glass thick with a film that wasn't dust, but something twin-breathing, something twin-waiting. The air in the room had thickened since the last time I'd touched it, cloying as the scent of old pennies left in a sock. The cat sat on the desk again, its grin a jagged thing, not a smile but a sprom I see. The teeth too many to count, each one a needle pressed against the flesh of the world. I exhaled. The breath came back wrong, damp, copper tasting, like the first drag from a cigarette after a year of not smoking. The jar pulsed beneath my palm, not with light but with something poo-wet, something that shifted like the slow, deliberate throb of a vein. The lid wasn't sealed. It was severed holding. My thumb pressed down. The glass didn't break. It tuffered unzipped. A sound like wet parchment tearing, like the slow, reluctant peel of a band-aid from a wound that never closes. The cat's tongue flicked out, not to lick, but to sire red, the tip of it pressing against the rim of the jar, tasting the air between the flesh and the void. The contents didn't spill. They unfolded. Not a heart, not a thing of foliage shade, pulsing violet. Not the color of bruises, not the hue of twilight, but something toy alive, something that throbbed in time with the gears grinding in the walls. The cat's grin widened, the teeth parting not in hunger, but in frignition. The thing in the jar wasn't a soul, it was a punmap, and it was mine. The wind pressed against the back of my neck, tasting of dust and something older pages left too long in the sun, the dry, papery scent of old ledgers in a bank vault. The jar's contents shifted, the violet light not illuminating but shiveling shoe like the slow, deliberate unpeeling of a bandage to show the rot beneath. The cat's breath was a wet foot hisser against my wrist, not a warning, but a foot confirmation. I knew what it meant. The thing in the jar wasn't the soul of my last victim. It was the shape of my own. The teeth weren't hers. They were mine, too many, too sharp. The grin wasn't a smile, it was a hinge held open by something that wasn't quite flesh. The cat's tongue pressed against the jar's rim again, not licking, but pulling, the violet light clinging to its fur like ink on a finger. The thing inside twitched what? Not in fear, but in footy anticipation. I didn't think. The glass tasted like copper rust, like the first bite of a penny left too long in a child's mouth. Not bitter, not sweet, but furong. The way a song played backward tastes like the echo of a scream. The jar didn't shatter. It melted, not into liquid, but into faux pressure. The violet light not fading, but twice spreading, seeping into my jaw, my throat, my teeth. The cat's grin was my own. The teeth were mine own. The teeth were mine, and the jar wasn't a container, it was a foy door, and I was already inside. Elias turned. The cat was gone, but the floor, it breathed, wetly, softly, like a lung filled with fluid rather than air. Each inhale was a glutinous gurgle, each exhale a damp sigh that kissed his boots and left them slick with something thicker than moisture. He kicked out at nothing, expecting to meet resistance. The unyielding solidity of concrete or tile, but the floor yielded beneath him like flesh. His foot sank in up to the ankle, swallowed whole by the pulsating violet glow emanating from within its depths. It felt alive under his touch, fleshy and organic, the texture not unlike that of a tongue turned inside out. The wind pressed against his back then, tasting of old books left too long on library shelves, a scent that lingered in the corners of ancient institutions where knowledge decayed into dust. But there were no windows here to let it in, no doors or vents through which it could whisper its secrets. Yet still, it came. Elias spun around, his heart pounding like a drum echoing off the walls of this impossible place. The cat stood behind him now, its human-like smile stretched wide across too many teeth. Its eyes were mirrors, black and reflective, and they showed not Elias's reflection but something else entirely, a dead face staring back at him through layers upon layers of violet light. He stumbled backwards, his heel catching on the yielding floor. He fell hard onto his ass, the shock jarring up his spine like the metallic rasp of fur against glass, the sound he'd heard when opening that damned jar. The cat hadn't moved. It just stood there watching him with those mirror eyes, its grin never fading. The walls around them began to grind then, gears turning deep within their foundations, a slow, deliberate movement designed more for intimidation than efficiency. Elias could feel the vibrations through his palms where they pressed against the floor, each pulse sending a fresh wave of dread coursing through him. He looked up at those grinding walls, their surfaces slick with something viscous and dark, and realized that this was no hotel room. It never had been. This place wasn't built for sleeping or eating or fucking. No, it was designed for something far worse. It was a womb, and Elias was the fetus struggling to be born. The cat stepped closer, its grin widening if such a thing were possible, as if sensing his newfound understanding. Its tongue flicked out again, not licking but tasting. The air between them now thick with violet light and something else too. Anticipation. Elias felt it then. A sensation like velvet gloves slipping over his hands, cold and smooth against his skin. He looked down at his fingers splayed across the floor, at how they seemed to blend into the flesh of this place, and understood what was happening. The walls weren't grinding, they were free closing in on him. They were closing in on him. And there wasn't a damned thing he could do about it. He tried to push himself up, to run, to escape, but his hands slipped off the floor as if greased with bile. He fell back down again onto that yielding surface which seemed intent on swallowing him whole. The cat watched him struggle from those mirror eyes of hers, watched and waited, and Elias could do nothing but stare back at it, through layers upon layers of violet light. The walls closed in tighter still, the grinding gears now a cacophony of noise designed to drown out all other sound, to leave no room for anything except their relentless advance. But amidst that chaos, there came another sound too, a wet tearing like Velcro separating under duress. Elias looked up just as the cat's reflection in those mirror eyes began to change. His own face morphed into something else entirely, something twisted and grotesque, and he realized with a sickening lurch of his stomach that this wasn't simply about him anymore. This was personal now. This was personal. Because when all is said and done, there is only one thing left for the watchman at the gate. The cat smiled wider still, the teeth too many to count, as Elias Wright became nothing more than another reflection staring back out through layers upon layers of violet light, and then it swallowed him whole. I stumbled through the mirror's glass, not breaking but dissolving like salt in water. The lobby air tasted of old library books left too long in the dark, dusty, sour, and thick enough to choke on, where the window should have been. Only violet light pulsed, bleeding from the walls like a wound. The cat stood there, its human smile stretching too wide, teeth glinting wetly in the glow. Each tooth was a tiny mirror, reflecting not my face, but a dead thing with eyes like polished river stones. To me teeth. I felt the shift in my jaw, a wet pressure where my own teeth should be. Too many. I tried to touch my mouth, fingers sinking into the soft resistance of my own skin, fleshy, organic, not the dry surface I knew. The cat tilted its head, the smile never wavering, its tongue flicked out, tasting the air between us. I smelled it then. The sharp tang of copper, the taste of my own blood on my tongue. Always the blood. I lunged after it, not running but stumbling, my feet slipping on the floor that felt like a tongue turned inside out. The cat led me toward the wall where the window had been, its smile widening as if greeting an old friend. The window was the cat. The cat was the window. Foo-foo, the realization hit like a fist to the chest. This place didn't have exits. It had fusose. The cat carried them, one by one, through its teeth. I chased it, my breath ragged, the sound of my own heartbeat loud in my ears like a drum against the walls. The floor yielded beneath me, not tile, but the soft resistance of a living thing, swallowing my foot whole for a moment before releasing me with a wet fitch lick. I fell hard, my palms hitting the floor. It felt like pressing my hands into warm, wet clay. Too warm, too alive, too alive. The cat watched me struggle, its mirror eyes reflecting the violet glow, but not my face. Something else, something older. I saw my own teeth in its smile. Rows of them, each one a tiny, perfect keyhole. Mimi's soul was in its teeth. The walls began to grind again. Not gears this time, but the slow, deliberate crushing of a jaw. The violet light deepened, pulsing like a heartbeat. The wind pressed against my back, tasting of copper and old paper, but there were no windows to let it in. Whooshed the cat's breath, whooshed myself up, my hands slick with something thicker than moisture. The cat stepped closer, its grin stretching impossibly wide. Its teeth were not just mirrors, they were the door. The exit. The exit. I saw it then. The cat wasn't. A way out. It was the 4D cat's mouth. And the cat was the way in. I stumbled toward the spot where the window should have been, the floor yielding beneath me like flesh. The cat's eyes held mine, the reflection shifting, the dead face inside the violet glow. 240, my dead face. I opened my mouth to scream, to ask, but the sound that came out was wet, gurgling, like water filling a lung. My own teeth felt wrong, too many, too sharp. The cat's smile widened. Always. A vociferity the wind tore through the lobby, a wet sifferty like separating skin from bone. I stared at my own reflection in the cat's eyes. Rows of teeth, too many, each one a soul, fucking soul. The cat's smile was the window, and the window was the cat, and I was the thing being filed away, one tooth at a time. The floor swallowed my foot whole. I tried to pull back, but the flesh held me fast. The cat's tongue flicked out, tasting my fear, 40 my fear, twimmy teeth, tileways.